Mary Landrieu gets the boot. Rolling Stone comes under fire, and why it's time to detox your desk. All these stories and more coming up on the Rundown.
All right, stand by. 10 seconds.
Ready, camera.
Record.
3, 2, 1.
Record.
Thanks so much for joining us. This is the Rundown, where we run down some of the big stories making headlines. I'm your host, John Phillips. Joining us from Washington, D.C. is PJTV contributor Michelle Fields. And here in studio, we're joined by stand-up comic Stephen Cruiser. Now it's time to go to the top of the Rundown. And Michelle, you're up first.
At the top of my rundown, Rolling Stone magazine wrote an article about an alleged gang rape of a University of Virginia student. But the victim's facts just aren't adding up. The victim's story has changed, including the date of the attack and specific details. The frat house where the attack was said to have taken place received a lot of heat since the story was written. The fraternity says these allegations and the story are false. And if anyone, any journalist had written the story, there were certain facts that you could easily fact check, like whether there was ever a party at this frat house on said date. There was no party the weekend. That apparently Jackie, who is the alleged victim, said that where she was gang raped. She said she was gang raped for an initiation. There's no rushing during the fall at this university. So there's a lot of problems and holes with this victim's story. John, why didn't the Rolling Stone reporter fact check this? And how did this get through an editor at the Rolling Stone? How did this end up in print?
Well, because they wanted the story to be true. And if the facts didn't add up to the story being true, well, then they just had to go ahead and fudge some things. And I go back to a conversation I had on my radio show once with my pal Mike Walker, who's a gossip editor of the National Enquirer. And many of those stories boil down to the same sorts of incidents that this story involved. And that is a he said, she said situation. So what Mike Walker does, and this is what they do at the National Enquirer, which the Rolling Stone magazine editors should have done in this particular story, they always look at the checkable facts. What can be checked? Outside of the he said, she said. Do initiations happen on this date? Was there a party that happened on this particular date? Where were the principals located at that time? Did they use their credit cards? Were they seen places? Do they have tickets? Were they at a football game? Were they at a basketball game? Were they somewhere where you can say, okay, for sure this person was here? And Rolling Stone didn't do the basics at figuring out what the checkable facts had to say. And if you can't figure out the checkable facts, then why in the hell would you believe someone in a he said, she said if they're telling you lies in terms of what you can verify?
But it isn't even a he said, she said scenario. It's a she said, because they never actually went and talked to the person who she was accusing of molesting her, raping her. Cruiser, is this just the typical case where a journalist puts the cause over the actual facts of the story?
I think that's exactly what's happening. And also, there are so many times, especially in the digital media era, where I find myself asking, does an editor exist at this entity? There's so many things that come out that aren't as egregious or awful or sad as this, where you find out that there really wasn't basic editing done right now. But again, this fits an overarching narrative. We've, with the affirmative consent laws we've seen lately and everything, it's about denying males on college campuses due process and going with a narrative right now that isn't always backed up by the facts. And it's because it fit that narrative that I don't think that anybody even wanted to check it. Had there been an editor who normally does these kinds of things at Rolling Stone, which I don't think really exists at this, and we'll get to that in my thing later on, but I think that this happens too often in left media journalism right now. If it fits one of the 2 or 3 big narratives at the moment, they really don't care about facts at all.
And they just did this with the Duke lacrosse story.
Yes.
They just made all of these same mistakes, and they repeated them over and over and over again because they just want it to be true so bad.
And they libeled an entire group of males on a campus. In this case, it was a fraternity. And in that case, it was the Duke lacrosse teams. And they're getting away with it, I think. I don't think that they're going to be sued for libel for that. I mean, and if they are, who knows if it's going to stick.
And for more on this story, Stephen Cruiser has some details.
At the top of my rundown, I have more on that. I wrote about this for the PJ Tatler last Friday. Be sure to check that out. It's nice that Rolling Stone finally acknowledged the discrepancies in the story, but it would have been better had an editor had done his or her job in the first place. But what really I found disturbing about this was after Rolling Stone apologized, what's been going on since Friday now is demonizing anybody who questions it in the first place. So Zerlina Maxwell wrote over for the Washington Post. She said, we should automatically believe these claims. And then she was called out on that. Washington Post changed the title of the thing to, we should generally believe these claims. It's just facts be damned. And I kept trying to make the point with a few people the other day saying, it's a heinous crime. So shouldn't it be criminal to falsely accuse someone of it too? I mean, it's just an awful, awful crime. And I was told I was trivializing the incident by doing that. I was joking about it. I said, no, I'm asking you a real question here. And so it doesn't really matter anymore because this is what I think this is the hill that feminism wants to die on right now.
Well, I was looking at coverage on this story all weekend, and I forget who it was, and I'm sad that I forget who it was because we should call this person out. But somebody said, well, it doesn't matter if the facts don't check out in this particular story. The overarching issue is that it could be true. And that's what we should be talking about. Let's not get caught up in the facts, and let's not get caught up in the allegations that were made. It could be true. So that's what we need to focus on. It's unbelievable. It
could be true that my quiet neighbor is burying bodies out in the woods, too. That doesn't mean I get to accuse him of it. In the long run, Michelle, this obviously does a disservice to the people who are falsely accused, but doesn't it do just as big a disservice to women who are actually raped when you have people fighting for the false accusations like this?
Well, look, accusing someone of rape is a crime by falsely accusing them of that. And if you do it, this is not a victimless crime what you're doing. If they did not do this and have nothing to do with this situation, you are tarnishing their reputation forever. They're going to be known as that one guy who was accused of rape. It's all online. I mean, you are ruining someone's life. And it's unfair to the women who are raped, who are victims of sexual assault, because now when they speak up, people are not going to believe them. They're going to think, oh, it's another one of those jackies from the Rolling Stone magazine that's falsely accusing people. And it's not just this situation, the Rolling Stone article. There's also Lena Dunham, who wrote in her book that a Republican named Barry raped her when she was in college. Well, now we know, thanks to Breitbart, that that Barry and the things that she, the characteristics and the job that she said that Barry had in college, there's no such Barry that lives up to that who went to college with her. So it seems like there are these crazy women that want attention and come up with this, and then everyone suffers. We have victims who are accused of things they didn't do, and then we have women who are maybe raped and maybe raped in the future and have been raped, and now when they speak up, no one's going to believe them.
And it's the Lena Dunhams and the people like the Rolling Stone writer who are the ones actually trivializing the subject.
The blogger Charles Johnson says that he knows who Jackie is, and that she needs to come clean with all the facts, or he's going to go out and out her. And he says not only
he already
will he...
has.
Oh, has he?
Late last night,
he has on his website, yes.
Okay, do we know if it's true?
Her full name and where she's from. It hasn't been verified, which is why I'm not going to say the name on air, but if you go to his website, he has a name up there and where she grew up, where she lives, that type of information.
Should she be outed?
I absolutely think so. I do. I think what she's doing is wrong. She's ruining people's lives, and she ruined a lot of men's lives because now, University of Virginia, people know that there's a certain group of people, and on the campus, they know who those guys are who are accused. They're ruining their reputation. I mean, she should have to answer for what she did.
Should she?
I would check first. This is how conspiratorial I'm getting on this. I would check to see if she was approached to tell the story first. Actually, and I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
This is a real sticky situation because my pal Tom Likas, who's a radio personality here in Los Angeles, identified the woman that accused Kobe Bryant of rape. Because Kobe Bryant's name was dragged all through the headlines, and Kobe Bryant's good name was damaged in that story. He was never criminally convicted of anything, and she maintained her anonymity through the whole process. And Likas found out who it was, and he put her name out there, which then spread like wildfire. And a lot of the women's groups came down on Likas for doing that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you want women to not be afraid to report. Yeah, I mean it's a balance there. Yeah.
Well, when your story doesn't add up, I think you need to answer some questions.
I think if we could legally punish people who are proven to be liars about it, I mean, I can't imagine being accused of something. You can't just go wantonly accusing people of horrible crimes. There has to be some protection for that.
Well, especially if you do it for malicious reasons.
Yeah.
Like, say, Al Sharpton with Tawana Brawley.
Yes.
You just make something up. All right, moving on to the top of my rundown. In Louisiana, Democratic Senator Mary Landrieu lost in the runoff election against Bill Cassidy. She just didn't lose, she got blown out. She won 44% of the vote. Cassidy, a Republican congressman, attacked Landrieu for her support of President Obama. They voted together 97% of the time. It was the final undecided race in the midterm elections. Republicans now have 54 seats in the United States Senate. And this is one case, Cruiser, where we all knew the Republican was going to win. Even in the November election, the Republican was up. But the Republican was up in the head-to-head matchup in the last poll by single digits. She got blown out by double digits. Does the margin matter here, the fact that things have gotten worse for the Democrats since Election Day and not better?
Well, I think you're seeing it's a reflection of what the president's done since Election Day. He hasn't helped anything at all. He went out and went with the overreach with the immigration stuff right away, and he's been bickering with Democratic leadership. So I think everybody can plainly see that they're in a bit of free fall right now. And I definitely don't think because you're right, the difference between what it was on Election Day, the fact that it was forced to a runoff, to what happened Saturday, that's just huge. And that wasn't that big, it's a month. And I do think it's reflective of the people. There's a little bit of bandwagoning going on here. Everybody wants to be with the winning team for a while, and I think a lot of those fence sitters are going, well, the Republicans are looking good these days. And I think, but in the end, it's also because Mary Landrieu was perhaps the biggest train wreck of a candidate. She was for Barack Obama in front of some audiences, against Barack Obama in front of other audiences. She was for and against seemingly everything on the planet in the last few days before this runoff election. And it was obvious to anyone watching, even a casual observer, that she was falling apart.
Can we put that video, that B-roll of Mary Landrieu back up? Look at that. Michelle, as you look at that image, doesn't she look a whole lot like Hillary Clinton? Doesn't she dress a whole lot like Hillary Clinton? Doesn't she have a lot of similar positions to Hillary Clinton? The fact that she went down in such a huge blowout when Hillary Clinton just had a fundraiser in New York State for Mary Landrieu, and it didn't help her out one iota. How bad is this for Hillary Clinton as she's looking at these results?
Well, I think it shows that Hillary Clinton doesn't have it in the bag, that people are not just going to go out and vote for her because she's Hillary Clinton. That shows that. I mean, she and her husband campaigned for people who ended up losing. But I think this is more about President Obama than it is about Hillary Clinton. The senator or former senator, was closely associated with the president, and that's what people, went and voted for. They voted against President Obama when they went to vote for her because they didn't like the association. And like Cruiser said, she was a phony. People realized that. When she was around white audiences, she would distance herself from President Obama. But then when she'd go speak to African Americans, it was, oh, I'm with the president. The Republicans are racist. I mean, those were the sentiment that she was giving off to African Americans. And people realized that. They saw that it was fake and phony. And that's why she ended up losing really bad with the white vote, because they realized that she was lying, that she was a phony. If you're gonna be with the president, then be with the president. Don't say one thing to one group and another thing to another group.
Best trolling post this election so far, Rand Paul, his Twitter account. The Rand Paul Twitter account has been going nuts, listing all of the people that Hillary endorsed in this election who lost, calling it Hillary's losers. And he started as soon as this was called the other day. And this thing was called in, 45 seconds?
Yeah.
I think after the polls closed. Yeah, it's by far the greatest thing I've seen in a potential candidate's social media approach to something.
If you look at the headlines on Drudge, it's being blamed, her loss is being blamed, obviously, on President Obama's bad numbers and Hillary Clinton's inability to motivate people to go out in favor of her pal Mary Landrieu. But in my opinion, the person most responsible for Mary Landrieu losing, and Pryor and other Democrats in the South, Kay Hagan, I'd even throw her in, and why Virginia was so close, is because Harry Reid was too clever by a half. he wouldn't let them vote on anything controversial. So what you had voting records for all of these Southern Democrats that were 97% in lockstep with President Obama. They wouldn't be 97% because they do have policy differences. But because he withheld the vote on the Keystone Pipeline until after the November election, because he withheld votes on immigration, because he withheld votes on any number of things that would put these Southern Democrats at odds with the president, they appeared to be in total lockstep with him, and that just killed them back home.
That's a brilliant analysis. I agree with that. I think he tried to protect them in a time when it wasn't the greatest thing to do. It's just he could have made up all kinds of things for them to vote on. This is a strategy that the two Republicans from Maine used to use with each other all the time. One would vote yes on something, one would vote no, then they'd flip, and they'd always have cover.
Yeah.
And Collins and the other one, I forgot her name, Olympia Snowe.
Right.
That's how they did that for 20 years.
But he thought he was giving them cover by not having them vote on anything controversial, when in reality he hung them. All right, now it's time to move on to Under the Radar. This is where we take a look at some stories that should have made bigger headlines but didn't. And Cruiser, you're up first.
Under the radar, I'm putting Rolling Stone magazine in the spotlight again because this is something that should have been under the radar a few years ago, but this is also why I'm having such schadenfreude over their falling apart in the last few days. This is how they eulogized our good friend Andrew Breitbart when he died. They said, Andrew Breitbart, death of a douche. That was the headline on the eulogy. I mean, even Eric Boehlert from Media Matters had something grudgingly nice to say about Breitbart when he died. This is what Rolling Stone did. They have been a sham rag tabloid and I used to love Rolling Stone when I was younger. Used to read it, I mean, just for the top 100 albums of this whatever list all the time. But this is where they've been going for years. And this is, so in the end, the reason they did this is because that's who they are now. They are a bad tabloid.
And let's not also let them off the hook for putting one of the Tsarnaev brothers on the cover.
Oh, God.
And turning him into a rock star.
And yeah, making it look like a Tiger Beat issue.
I have a prediction. Before too long, we're going to be doing a eulogy for the death of a douchebag magazine.
Thank you.
All right, Michelle.
Under the radar, there could be more than 10 million disease-causing bacteria on your desk. That's 400 times more bacteria than on the average toilet seat. Ew, that's so gross. A study in the UK found that your workspace is infected with bacteria which can breed viruses. This is what contributes to so many people getting sick and missing work every year. 7,500 organisms are on your computer keyboard alone. Better cleaning methods would result in fewer sick days. That's why you gotta wash your hands with warm soap and water and use hand sanitizer after leaving the bathroom. Gross.
And I think you could put alcohol on your phone. Put alcohol on a cotton ball and wipe your phone down once a week.
It's your phone and your computer keyboard that are the worst, and I disinfect them all the time, but I also have started working from my bathroom. It's just easier.
Moving on. In my Under the Radar story, in her newly released memoir, Lena Dunham claims that she was raped by a prominent Republican while she was attending Oberlin College. Breitbart did its own investigation and found that Dunham's facts just don't add up. Breitbart News couldn't find a Republican named Barry who attended the college during Dunham's time there. In fact, they couldn't find anyone who matched Dunham's description. Dunham, one of the stars of the HBO series Girls, received more than $3.5 million for her memoir. And the best fact-checking that Breitbart could do is that Republicans have taste, so they would never be interested in her.
Thank you. No, but there's something pathological going on with Lena Dunham, though. She's not, this isn't just sensationalist attention-getting stuff. She's a little
cuckoo.
Twisted. Yeah, she's nuts.
That's going to do it for today's show. What are your thoughts on Mary Landrieu losing the runoff election in Louisiana? And what about Rolling Stone? How much longer does that rag have left in it? Be sure to leave your comments in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips. For Stephen Cruiser joining me here in L.A., Michelle Fields in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.